turn to the next blank page in your journal, put today's date at the top, and the title of today's lesson is Lesson 6-2, Naming and Drawing Angles. For today's lesson, you will also need to get out your protractor and a glue stick. We do have 2 new vocabulary words today, or more like symbols. The first symbol that you see looks a little like the less than symbol, but when you see this symbol, it is the symbol for angle. So if I'm talking about angle A, I would put that symbol in front. If you see an italicized M in front of the angle symbol, that means it's them talking about the measure of angle A. So if you see this, I would want to put a degrees after it, like 19 degrees. Please hit pause and copy your vocabulary into your journal. The first thing we're going to be doing today is naming an angle, and you can name an angle in 3 ways. Please draw this angle into your journal, and let's label it. I'm going to put a point A, point B, and point C. The first way that I can name an angle is by its vertex point. Remember, the vertex is where the 2 rays meet. So one way to name this angle is angle B. I can also name my angle by using all 3 letters that I'm given as my points. But if I do, you have to remember that your vertex point B always has to be in the middle. So I could also name this angle A, B, C. So that's the second way to name it, angle A, B, C. Or I could start with C and say C, B, A. So the third way to name my angle is angle C, B, A. Now let me show you a non-example. I could not call this angle angle CAB because angle B is the point at the vertex and it has to be in the middle. This angle is telling me I have a line or a ray from C to A, then to B, and that is not true. So remember, if you're using 3 points to name an angle, your vertex always has to be in the middle. Now I want you to try naming an angle on your own. So if you would draw this angle into your journal, and let's label it with points X, Y, and Z. Hit pause and name your angle 3 different ways. Okay, let's check your work. One way that you could have named your angle was just by the vertex point, angle Y. I could have named it angle X, Y, Z. Or I could also name it angle Z, Y, X. Let's try this time with a different figure. I have now in front of us a trapezoid. So if you would please draw your trapezoid into your journal, and let's name the points at the angles M, N, O, and P. We are going to name each of the 4 angles 3 different ways. So let's start with angle M. This angle right here, I want to name this angle in 3 different ways. I can call it simply angle M, or I can name it by 3 points, but remember the vertex point M has to be in the center, so I can name it angle P, M, N. Or I could also name it angle NMP. Okay, let's go to our next angle. Let's go to angle N right here, and let's name it in 3 different ways. I can name it just by the vertex point, which is angle N, or I can name it with 3 points and call it angle MNO, or I can call it angle ONM. Remember that your vertex point is always in the middle. Okay, let's look at the next one. Let's go to angle O. This angle right here, I can name it simply by the vertex, angle O. If I use 3 points, I can name it angle PON, or I can name it angle NOP. Try the last angle on your own, name it 3 different ways, and then hit play when you're ready to check. Okay, let's check. Your last angle here, you could have named it angle P, angle OPM, or you could have named it angle MPO. If you got it right, give yourself a smiley face. Now pull out your worksheet, and we're going to work through some of these sample problems together. Here it says to use 3 letters to name the angle. Name all of the angles in figure 1. So we're going to see how many different angles we can find. Here's angle BAC. Then I have angle BAD, it's a right angle. Then I have angle BAE. Then I have a straight angle, angle BAF. Now you might think we're done, but we're not. So let's see if we can find some other angles. I see an angle CAD, an angle CAE, I have angle CAF, and I'm still not finished. I still see some more angles. I have angle DAE. Let's see if we can find any more. We already have FAB. We already wrote that here, but that's okay if it's backwards. So if you see any more that I left out, hit pause and write them down. Okay, there were 2 that I left out. Did you find them? They were angle FAE and angle FAD. Let's look at figure number 2. It says I can name an angle by using just the 1 letter that's at its vertex point. So on this figure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different angles to name. So how can I name this angle using just 1 point? That's correct. I can call this angle Y. How can I name this angle? Correct. Angle D. And in the triangle I have 3 angles. We have angle A, angle B, and angle C. Now let's look at figure number 3. Sometimes we will not be given letters to name the angles. We will be given numbers. So here, I would call this angle 1. This angle here, I would call angle 2. This angle, I would call angle 3. This angle, I would call angle 4. And then this angle, we could also call angle 5. If you're naming an angle by a number, it's only going to have one number. I cannot call this whole angle here angle 2, 3. I have to name them individually. Now let's look at part B. Part B says angles are measured in degrees. The symbol, which is the little circle up at the top, stands for degrees. A lowercase m is written in front of the angle symbol to indicate the degree measure of an angle. Use figure 1 and write the measure of angle EAF, angle DAF, and angle CAF. So you need to pull out your protractor. And first let's find the measure of angle EAF. To make it a little easier for us, I'm going to trace. So I want to trace from E to A to F. So here's the first angle that I want to measure. So I'm going to line up my vertex point with my hole punch. I'm going to make sure that my bottom line, or my bottom ray, is lined up with the 0. Then notice, since my arrow is pointing to the right, I'm going to start at the right. I'm going to start with 0, which is my inside numbers. So I'm going to go around, and I notice it crosses. Here's 40, crosses halfway between 40 and 50, which is 45 degrees. So the measure of angle EAF is 45 degrees. Now let's try our next angle. I have angle DAF, so I want to find the measure of angle DAF. So to help us find it, I'm going to trace from D to A to F. Then I'm going to line up my protractor. Make sure everything's lined up correctly. My bottom arrow is pointing to the right, so I'm going to start at 0, which is the inside numbers. And I'm going to go around to where it crosses, and notice it doesn't go up enough, so I'm going to have to extend my ray, and I'm going to use a sharp pencil to extend so I get an accurate measurement. Going to line it up again. I'm still using my inside numbers because I'm starting at 0. And I notice mine crosses at about 89 degrees. So I'm going to say the measure of angle DAF is 89 degrees. Remember that I will accept 3 degrees difference, either higher or lower than the answers that I get. So let's try our next one, angle CAF. So I want to measure and find how many degrees is in angle CAF. So I'm going to trace C to A to F, and I'm going to go ahead and extend my top ray so that I make sure it goes out far enough for me to measure. So I'm going to line up my protractor. I'm starting at 0. Since my bottom ray is pointing to the right, I'm going to start at 0 on the right. 0's on the inside. I'm going to follow it around, and here's 130, and it looks like mine crosses at about 135 degrees. Now that we've reviewed measuring, now we're going to draw angles when we're given a measurement. So back in your journal, it wants me to draw an angle that measures 98 degrees. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to draw a ray. So skip about 4 or 5 lines on your notebook paper, and I'm going to draw a ray. Next, I'm going to line up my protractor with that bottom ray. Notice my arrow goes straight out that 0 line. And I want to put a mark where 98 degrees is located. So my bottom ray points to the right, so I'm going to start at the right, and start at 0, which is my inside numbers, and I'm going to go around until I get to 98 degrees. So here's 80, 90, 95, 96, 97, 98 degrees. I'm going to put a tiny little mark there. Then I'm going to use my protractor to draw a ray from my mark to my vertex. I'm going to put an arrow at the end, and I'm going to label that as 98 degrees. Let's try another. This one wants me to draw an angle that measures 105 degrees. This time I'm going to draw my angle, my ray, pointing to the left. So I'm going to draw my ray, line up my protractor. This time, since I'm starting at 0 still, but since 0 is on the outside, I'm going to use my outside numbers, and I'm going to go all the way around until I get to 105. So here's 80, 90, 100. Here's 105, so I put a little mark. Then I'm going to connect that mark to my vertex point. Put an arrow on the end of my ray, and I'm going to label that angle as 105 degrees. Let's try one more together. Draw an angle that measures 36 degrees. So first I'm going to use my protractor to draw my ray. You can draw your ray pointing any direction you want. I'm going to line up my protractor. Since my ray is pointing to the left, I'm going to start at the left, and I start with 0, so that's my outside numbers. So I'm going to go around 10, 20, 30. Here's 35, here's 36. I'm going to put a tiny hash mark at 36. Then I'm going to use my protractor to connect my hash mark and my vertex. Don't forget your arrow. And then I have a measure that measures 36 degrees. Turn to your next blank page in your journal. Divide your piece of paper into 4 equal boxes and answer questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 of independent practice in your journal, and I'll check them when you come to class tomorrow.